Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, everyone. Good to be with you.
I think we're getting used to that. I don't know. Whatever. All right. I meant to look this up. Is this month wetter than normal? I mean, I was gone for part of this month, but it just seems that there's just been a
Normal
lot.
for a rainforest, I guess. But man, the whole like eastern side of the country is just one rainstorm after another. So I mean, we're all so I don't know what the Ninos and the Ninas are doing down there, but they're sending us a ton of water.
Yeah, I mean, my grass looks good, but that also means it's going to grow faster. So
Yeah,
that's
the
not.
grass is growing insanely fast.
Yeah,
We do got the grass growing combos going around here anyway.
yeah. It just doesn't do a whole lot for your golfing there.
No, no. And it's like, this time of year, it's like real busy of AAU. So
Right.
I only have a few certain slots. I also have like Marty's graduating and he's going to all this stuff. So like a lot of my open nights, oh, well, Marty has such and such that you need to go to. Okay. So go to that instead. So there's really not a lot of days I even can golf, but almost all of them, it's been too wet. So, I'm I'm not going to be very good the next time I get out there, and I'm just going to have the patience to live with it.
So speaking of Marty, I mean, has he chosen a school or vice versa?
He's going to. It looks like he's going to go to McDaniel up in Westminster. So he'll be up a little past you.
Yeah. I mean, I was the old Western Maryland College, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's nice up there. It's a nice school. I've been up there a couple of times. Just look around.
Yeah, I mean the area. I know the area up there is really, really nice. I mean, I would think that when you get to winter, it might be a little more brutal.
They were saying that they haven't gotten a lot of snow in recent years, and that like when we had the big snows last winter, this past winter, that they missed them. We actually, had a conversation with people about that. But I'm gonna tell you, you're up on a hill, right? They even call the campus the hill. Okay, so you're gonna have that child was gonna have some strong calves by the time this is over because there's a lot of hills. And B, you're up in central Maryland in hills, you're going to get some cold wind. So I think my son will not miss winter. He will get the full portion.
Yeah, I mean, I know quite a few of my classmates from almost 50 years ago. I mean, they went to Western Maryland and some went out to Shepherdstown and stuff like that. So it's yeah, if it wasn't, I still remember those old days, but yeah, I don't remember exactly when they changed their name, but
yeah, it's been since I've been here.
It's been a while now. So yeah, I think what happened one day is I'm like, McDaniel. I was like, what the heck is McDaniel?
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Well, that's good. Good for him. Good for him.
And he's going. Well, I got to brag. He's going to get tomorrow. We're going to a banquet. He's going to get an award from the Association of the U.S. Army for his ROTC stuff. So, he congratulations to Marty. He's doing good.
Good. Excellent. I love that. I particularly like anything involved when they're doing ROTC and things like that. I always think that's a really
ROTC plus an athlete. That's somebody they don't have time to do a whole lot of goofing around, right?
Yeah.
Getting in trouble.
But now he's going to be away from home.
Yeah. And MK is moving out like the week after Marty graduates from high school. So we're about to get empty nested in like 3 or 4 days. So we're not quite there on being ready for that.
Well, that was going to be the thing. It's just like, I don't know. I mean, I think Papa Bear here. I think you'll be fine in time. It's usually the Mama Bear that has, it's the close nurturing of the children. But you're close to your kids too. But yeah, the empty nester thing is kind of a weird feeling at first.
Yeah.
You know, because you spend all those years with your kids, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, now they're adults and they're actually out of the house, and they may or may not uh, stay in contact with you as much as you would like, and all these things. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah. So I'm telling all this, I'm telling my mother-in-law, it's like, this is kind of getting to us, My mother-in-law's like, well, what happens is they call you less and less and less, and then you get to the point where you hardly ever hear from them. Like,
oh, thanks a lot.
That's exactly what I need to do. She's really funny. She's really good at like just delivering the
We're just gonna cut to the chase, okay?
We're not gonna put right into the ditch. But I love her dearly. She's great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to see. Well, my it's been a while. I mean, my kids are older than your kids, and so even though they had some technology when they went to college, it's interesting to see, the communication or lack thereof, and how each one, handled it, right? So the over time, I mean, there was a time when, calling on the phone was a big deal. Now it seems to be it's all about texting and whatever, phone call. I mean,
who
my
has
kids,
time? Yeah.
That's not something they do. And even texting sometimes it's like, can you please send us a picture of the grandkids? You might get one once in a while. It's like pulling teeth, and we're like, we would really like a little bit more, but you just you realize at some point in time, and yours are still young enough, and I think you still have good connections. There's a point in time when they have their own lives, and and then you become but you're still the parent. You'll always be their parent, and so but I've always thought that you had a very good relationship with your children. You've always been really close. So I think everything is going to be fine. Empty nester, yes, and technically, but those your children
Connected.
are going to be your children are going to stay really connected. I have no doubt about that at all. All right, moving on to the news.
Okay.
So
something less depressing.
Yeah, something less depressing. I could talk about a lot of other depressing things. I was thinking that before. Okay, so one more thing before. So I'm thinking here this morning. I'm like, okay, so we've been home for about 8 days, and this jet lag thing is we still haven't quite shaken it. It's like you just find yourself just nodding off in the middle of the day or late in the afternoon. Things. I mean, I'm old. I can have an excuse for nodding off at any time, but when if I start getting sleepy more often than I used to, I'm like, when is this going to end?
Yeah, I hear you.
We
went. So this weekend we went from here to Louisiana to Raleigh and met a bunch of Lori's relatives in Raleigh. So I've been in the car for a long time, and I'm still trying to get recovered from that too.
Yeah, and I thought too. I thought, shoot, when was the last time I did international travel? And it's like, my wife and I did a cruise about 10 years ago, which required really it was flying from here to Philadelphia, then to Venice, and then that's where we caught the ship, and then we didn't fly. We flew back from from Barcelona, and I thought, that was okay compared to flying to Asia. The whole Asia thing was just been a complete twist of turning your body around and saying where am I, what am I doing, and everything like that, and leaving my wife trying to decide, do I want should we go back we try to go back next year, but I kind of said my goodbyes to my aged relatives this year, so it was like oh yeah.
See, that's the other one. Man, what if they move overseas? What if your kids
yeah, I mean,
anyway,
my kid,
I got to get off that topic.
Yeah, okay, that's all right. Time to move on. All right. Enough. All right. So internationally, we've got a few things going on here. We've got Russia hitting Ukraine, and and I guess Trump is like, I don't know what the hell they're doing. I think he's just getting more and more pissed off at Putin.
Right. And it's like he had it where he was a pretty good situation to be an honest broker on this, right? Because he was not pro. He didn't take one side over the other, right? He's kind of treated them both the same, which, a lot of people in the United States are like, well, we should be on the side of Ukraine because Russia attacked them and Russia is our enemy and whatnot. And so, he's like, I'll work with you, as long as we're working toward the solution, then, I'm going to not trash you any harder, not trash the other guy. Right. But now he's getting to a point where he is doing, they're not working toward a solution. Right. Or they don't appear to be. The three biggest drone attacks of the war are all within the last week for the Russians against Ukraine. They're all in the last week. So, he's stepping it up. Trump is like, it's not a good time to step it up because, I'm intending for this to end. I'm intending for this to not happen anymore. So, if he runs afoul, because Trump's thing has been to try to negotiate a settlement in the more or less traditional way of doing that. And as Ben Shapiro points out, Ukraine, Zelensky has done exactly what Trump asked in the most recent past, right? Signed the minerals deal, went to Turkey to meet with Putin or whoever was going to be there to meet. He's stayed in his lane, right? And so now, Putin is risking Trump moving totally toward Ukraine on this, right? They want to make some weapon systems available for the Europeans to supply to Ukraine. So the Europeans EU spends the money on U.S. weapon systems and gives the weapons to Ukraine, which is win-win for, the Ukraine gets weapons. The EU countries meet their NATO spending obligations, which will make Trump happy. And, we're the ones making them, right? So, I think that he runs a risk of like that getting, jet setted, or what do you call it, turbocharged or whatever, because he doesn't have, he's making Putin into an enemy. He's getting, Putin is making Trump into an enemy, and I don't think he really wants to do that.
Yeah, I think that that Trump probably leaned a little bit more towards the Putin, side because he knew that Putin had more leverage over Ukraine and Zelensky. But as you said, Zelensky, has capitulated in the sense that he has signed off on a lot of things and said, yeah, go ahead, we'll do this and we'll do that. And they've made some pledges and commitments. That's the kind of thing that Trump wanted, whereas instead Putin just is like doubling down or whatever you want to call it, and he steps up these attacks, to the point where it's like, here's Trump, who had said that he would end the war in 24 hours, which I don't think anybody thought that was going to be realistic to begin with. But I think Trump is, his temper is getting a little bit short here because Putin is just kind of throwing these things in his face. It's like, yes, I do want to strike a deal under these conditions, and then he goes and strikes Ukraine, and you're like, well, that's not a guy who wants to settle anytime soon.
That's right.
He's still after taking the whole country.
Right. Trump's running out of patience too. And if he does run out of patience, you're going to see a series of steps the Russians cannot hack. They cannot survive.
Yeah. It's a little bit. It's kind of interesting because I don't know why Putin thinks that this is a good maneuver on his part is to whip up Trump because you don't want to get Trump angry. Okay, you just because he'll throw a bunch of stuff at you. It's like he is not your predictable president.
He's not a mouse either. I mean, he's he means it.
Yeah, no, he does. He's very serious about this. So, Putin's people better kind of read him the right act or something. Say, look, you need to kind of pull back on this. If we're going to be serious about this, let's get serious about this.
The Germans have told the Ukraine they will help them build long-range missiles to can reach Moscow. They're reaching Moscow now with drones. But if they can drop missiles into Moscow, you'll either see World War III or you'll see the end of the war real quickly. There's also some question about how long Putin can hang on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that could that's definitely something that can be called into question. So, we also have Trump's proposal on this Golden Dome. And apparently, I guess, if I understand this correctly, I mean, it could also involve Canada,
Right. So he told Canada, and what Golden Dome is like, it's sort of like the strategic defense initiative that Reagan was for. Right. But instead of one big one, it's a lot of little ones. So you put it where you need it, right? So it's possible for us to protect us and not Canada, right? We can small it down and say, guard Boston, but not Montreal, which is 100 miles away or whatever it is, right? So it is a real concern for the Canadians because now they're under our umbrella, and if we do this, they will be explicitly not under our umbrella of the protection of the Iron Dome. So Trump told the Harper, the new head of Canada, he said, it costs $61 billion for us to protect Canada. And we're happy to sell it to you for $61 billion, or you can get it free by becoming the 51st state. So
he finds a way to throw this 51st state in there. It's just like, hello.
Yeah, and the thing about it is like he says Canada is considering our offer. Okay, now, the internet collectively guffawed at that, right?
Yeah.
But Canada they may come out today and say, "Oh, screw Trump, we're not going to do that," but they haven't yet. So, the fact that they let that lay this long without saying anything, it tells me that they may be considering his offer.
I don't know. I mean, it's like, is there? I guess it's just the collateral damage or whatever. I mean, if you strike Canada, I mean, you get a fairly wide swath with a nuclear bomb and whatnot. But I mean, Canada it's a very vast territory. You've got wide stretches where there's little or no population.
Right.
It's not
90% of it is within 100 miles of the border.
Yeah.
Right. And then almost all that is on the eastern side, Ontario, Quebec.
Right.
Western is
sparse. But it's not as strategic as striking, New York City or Washington D.C. or whatever.
Right.
If you're Russia, North Korea, China, and you're even contemplating any of these things, it doesn't have hitting Canada would not have the same effect of actually getting into the United States itself. So I'm not sure that Canada being on the outs is a huge deal, but it is something to kind of watch.
I mean, to us, yeah, you can say, okay, why would Russia pick on Canada, right? But to the Canadians, it's like we are unprotected, and like we can't really speak against Russia, which they want to do now. They want to speak on behalf of Ukraine, right? You would have to sublimate that, not come out hard against Russia if you're exposed to their nuclear weapons.
Well, I mean, I think it's funny about this whole thing too. There's just that, these other nuclear powers, they're not happy with this proposal, and I'm like, yeah. It's like, sorry. I mean, the U.S. wants to throw up this protective thing, and you're complaining because it protects them more from possible strikes that you might have
from you. Yeah. Yeah, I understand your annoyance.
How dare you protect yourself against a potential strike from us?
That's right. Yeah, we'll take it, as my dad used to say, we'll take it under advisement.
Yeah. It's just I don't know. The world is a strange and funny place when it comes to things like this, that the ire of these other nuclear powers is raised when a country says, well, we're thinking about doing this to protect ourselves from potential nuclear strikes, and they're all indignant that you're doing that. It's like, yeah, sorry. I mean, it's that is actually our prerogative, and it's actually it's something that is responsible for us to do so and protect our citizens in our country. It's like, why would you want to leave yourself open if you have an opportunity to go ahead and protect yourself?
Right. That's
And
exactly
and I mean, especially with with North Korea, because you want to, if you want to talk about the unpredictability of things, that's a country that's extremely unpredictable. We don't know, what they will do. I don't think they're planning on doing anything anytime soon, but it's so unstable over there, and anything can happen at any time, and just to protect ourselves against North Korea and the crazy stuff that goes on over there, that's worth something to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, I don't know. I just can't quite figure that out. So this story that came out interested me because you've talked about it in the sense about intellectual property. The Chinese. We have no love lost for the Chinese and stealing secrets and IP and all this kind of stuff. And the story came out that this company called Too Simple, which had developed this autonomous vehicle, a truck, and it actually set a record for driving in the Arizona desert, without a driver, and everything like that, and got a lot of people excited. But they then they have shut down all their U.S. operations, and they're operating solely out of China now. But it was run by some Chinese entrepreneurs. But it's been reported that the things that they learned and other things about those trade secrets and whatnot, they sent them all to China.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but I mean, I think this is just a great case study of what we have to watch out for.
That's right.
People, I think too many of us are asleep at the wheel and thinking like, oh, the Chinese, they want to sell us EVs, that's fine. They want to sell us this, that's fine, and we can buy their products, and and all is just rosy and everything like this.
Yeah, plastic crap at Walmart. Who cares who has the patent on it? But
Right.
but this is different. This is something where the automated vehicle technology is there's a race to make that viable, right? It's close now, and there are some cars out there that do it, but I think pretty much everyone recognizes that we're not there yet technologically. So all the it's like my basketball. I tell my basketball team, and every one of them is just a learning experience, right? You just go, okay, that worked. This didn't work. Go back and fix and get better and make yourself better and so forth. Okay, so that's what we're sort of in that stage. We're working through tough opponents and trying to get past them and figure out, what gets us past these roadblocks. And if you're selling it, so now essentially all this technology is moved off of us to someone else, right? So, I mean, there's still American companies doing it. I'm not saying we're out of the EV car business, but things that got worked on here, and it's not America's property; it's Americans' property, right? But the value, but you're talking about, a lot of what Trump talks about. I guess you saw he went through with the Nippon Steel. He's going to let them take over U.S. Steel and run the big mills in Pittsburgh and elsewhere, which Nippon says it can do. Keep all those people on the payroll at their current thing. They got technology that makes it more profitable than it was before. So, we're willing to do that. We're willing to share technology, and I think Trump is right to do that. Sometimes other people have a little bit better insight on this, but we need to be who considers this case by case, not people stealing the stuff and running away.
Yeah, I mean, there's potential ramifications all the way through the line. I mean, like you said, who cares about the 99-cent fly swatter or whatever it is, and all the other a lot of the stuff that we get from China. It's a lot of the low tech stuff. It doesn't matter. Low tech, no tech. That's fine. I mean, all of our houses, across America, that are just filled with stuff that was made in China.
Yeah.
And that's just it's cheaper, and sometimes it lasts as long as it lasts. A lot of times the stuff doesn't and breaks and whatever, and you don't think, if you picked it up at the dollar store, you don't really care that much. You just go out and buy another one, and just repeat the cycle over and over again. But when we're starting to talk about technology, and it starts to get into the autonomous vehicle type of thing, I mean, this is a lot of work that goes into creating this.
A lot of jobs.
This is not an easy thing to create and to be able to, I mean, to run. But the Chinese are interested in trying to, they're gathering as much technology as they can. I mean, this has, with defense systems, we've gone, we have, we talked earlier, we mentioned about all the drone strikes, right? I mean, the Ukraine-Russia thing, is really largely about drone strikes on both sides.
A drone war in a lot of ways.
It really is. It's really probably the first real true drone war. I mean, these things have been used in Afghanistan and other places, but not to the extent that they've been used in Ukraine and Russia. And so you just kind of look at this. We have the rapid development of artificial intelligence. Such that it makes your head spin, and every time you turn around,
and the problem with that one is like, it's like they're letting the Taylor Lorenz write the answer to the questions, right? Like if you go, MRC's looking into this. They do prompts on search engine or chat bots to see what you get, right? And it's coming, it's being the left rushed ahead, and they're programming all this stuff to give left-leaning answers to almost every question. So like you don't if you truly come at it not knowing, you're going to get a leftist version of the answer to any question you ask on these chatbots, and it's all of them. It's even the one that Musk runs, is way left-wing biased.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, all these large language models, I mean, it's based on whatever they can pick up and learn. So I mean, if you feed it stuff from one side, that is its brain.
That's
its
right.
brain is the one side, in essence, and that's all it knows. I mean, I listen to several tech podcasts, and people are trying all different kinds of things with this. And some stuff works better than others. Some chatbots work better than others, depending upon some are there's a lot of them out there, and some are better at certain subject matter or whatever. So you can't rely on just one. But yeah, I mean, the idea that it would be left leaning, it's just like, okay, great. They already they co-opted Wikipedia from the get-go. They took that was a left-wing thing going on there, for which a lot of people rely on without realizing it's a left-wing thing. So chatbots, people aren't thinking about right-left politics necessarily, but if you're starting to get that divide where it's leaning heavily to the left, that's not a good thing for us either.
Right. I also want to say that I think that it reduces the value of it. I think that like if I owned a chat box, right, I would go and make it as neutral politically as it could possibly be, right? We're the ones who attempt fairness, right? We don't get there, write us and tell us, right? And we'll try to fix it. But we're attempting fact-based fairness, right? I have to believe that at this point, that's a selling point. That would be a great thing to market is, we're not a left-leaning or right-leaning newspaper or chat box or website or whatever. We're actually fair, right? And people try it. You see people try it. You see these like Just the News and people like that. They're trying to present themselves as right down the middle, as like non-ideological. But it's hard, and almost whatever you do, someone's going to critique it and say, no, you're ideological on this. So, but I think if I was in the chat box space, it's new, right? No one's sure who they rely on yet. Do you have one? Do you have a favorite yet? Do you have one that you think gives you all the right answers? Like I don't, right? I don't know who's giving the right answers. But if somebody came out and said, I'm giving answers that are not ideologically influence, I think you could win here. I really do.
Yeah, well, that'll be interesting to see. I mean, it's like, you know, I do my searches, internet searches on Google, and what they do is that they pretty much use their Gemini, chat
Right.
to at the top. So it's usually the first thing that breaks everything down. And and I'm going, if I don't do it, here we go.
Yeah. It's not a credible source, and Wikipedia itself should never be cited. Right. I think
Yeah,
that's right.
I kind of, every time I hear, Wikipedia cited for something to be a factual basis of things, I kind of cringe, because that just tells me. Now it depends upon also who's saying it. Is particularly if it's a left-wing talk show host or something like that. It's like, well, okay, that's
Yeah.
expected. If it's somebody that's more conservative and they bring up Wikipedia and they try to use that as a basis for fact, I'm like, you obviously don't know what Wikipedia is if you're citing it and you're a conservative. That's.
And if you're a researcher, if you're, and Bob, like these are supposed to be research products that he's getting from these students, right? Then you can't, Wikipedia is not research. Wikipedia may lead you to the research, right? But they put, and they put the links most of the time. Wikipedia, this is what this is based on, so you can see where they got it, and you can see the bias of that person, right? But then that person, that article, that's your source. Your source is not Wikipedia. Wikipedia just lined up your source for you, which is a thing they, the other thing is like Wikipedia, like you do the prompts and it finishes your sentence, like the searches, right? So those are all that is rigged. That is rigged to the left. They do it at every level.
Yeah, Wikipedia comes up. I think the one time I really ever look at it is like if I can't find enough, I don't see immediately the information I'm looking for.
Yeah, I do the born and died, like if somebody,
yeah,
when
right.
somebody died,
somebody like an actor or a personality,
yeah,
kind of stuff that's relatively straightforward, in terms of that, things that are, you're not really going to be rigging their birth date or their death date. There's really no purpose to doing that kind of a thing.
right.
But if you start wanting to get into a political debate or whatever, it's like that is not a reliable, credible source to have a political argument with.
Right.
And
like type in wind energy, see what you get.
Yeah, well, I think and I haven't done this for years, but I think in the early years, I type in accuracy in media, and it was like, ooh, who put this together? That type of thing. It's like, we hadn't been paying attention, and the left just went ahead and wrote whatever they wanted to write.
Right.
So it's basically like Media Matters had written the description.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
And the thing with Wikipedia is when you start making changes, they've got an army of people that are changing it back.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's kind of this battle. I'm like, I don't know. I wasn't willing to fight that battle. I'm like, people who know us, and I wasn't worried about it in the end. So, yeah, I don't know. I think, as with this whole, autonomous vehicle, the AI, the drones, the Chinese, and the intellectual property is just what kind of a danger gathering all this information represents, to us or to other nations, so that they can enhance their defense forces. They can conduct multifaceted wars. They can do it on multiple fronts, right?
Right.
They could go and attack Taiwan while still attacking another country and attacking another country, because they don't really have to have the troops necessarily. They can use the drones. They can send in autonomous vehicles potentially that can then also be run with weaponry that would fire or launch bombs or missiles on their own. There's just my head would almost explode with all the types of things that are going on. And as AI continues to learn, it continues to get better about pinpointing things and doing some things. And so it becomes, AI can be a big help, but it's also can be a big threat to people.
That's right.
And all that. And I don't know,
One day we're going to give the monkey the machine gun, and we're not going to know what that day is.
Yeah, and I don't know what the long-term effect is on, jobs and employment and things like that in terms of AI kind of taking over things that humans used to do. I have kind of mixed feelings because, on the other hand, there's things that we've discussed here on the show too before, is that because the birth rates are continuing to go lower and lower, yeah, you're going to almost kind of, if an economy or wants to function, they may wind up relying more and more on AI because there aren't people to do those tasks, and so some things that need to get done, AI will now fill a gap because they just don't have the personnel anymore. So I don't really know what the future holds for my grandchildren and whoever else comes later down the line, but it's going to be an interesting, maybe challenging time for all. I won't be around to see all of it come to fruition one way or the other, but nevertheless, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I don't want to see all that and all that. So, Trump and his kind of yin and yang, or kind of with these tariffs is always interesting. He continues to kind of jawbone his way through this, puts out tariff numbers, markets react negatively, pulls back, markets reverse course and go the other direction. One of the things that had cast a pall over the market since Liberation Day, had been these tariffs. Also it had affected consumer confidence, but the consumer confidence numbers came out and they have rebounded, tremendously, as people think that now.
Yeah, I think we're trained that it's going to be temporary, and he's using it as a negotiating tactic.
Right, and then maybe there are tariffs that are here to stay, but just not necessarily at the level that he's thrown out there. Trump has shown that there's some numbers that he's put out there that were just wildly high, and cause a lot of reverberations throughout the market, throughout the supply chain. But as people came to the table, those tariffs started to drop. Whether or not they're still too high in some cases, I don't know, but but I think it's had somewhat of an effect. I still think it's rather amusing though that because Trump says a lot of things, so you have to take things what he says with a grain of salt. There was no way in heck, in my opinion, that he was going to generate enough in tariffs to eliminate the income tax.
Well, I mean, they're I mean, I don't know, they're not ready to eliminate the income tax, but they are up to getting like $120 billion a month out of this.
Yeah, right? No, I mean,
a ton of money.
That was the one thing, is that they were they definitely brought in a ton of money.
And we actually had a plus quarter, right? The first quarter of Trump was, we took in more money than we spent. There was no deficit for that quarter.
I want to wait and see a little bit longer how this, because we've had so much back and forth. I think it's going to take a few months of inflation figures, job figures, and things like that to say, what, if any, effect did the tariffs have, negatively or positively, or however you want to look at it, on the market, on the economy overall. Because I think, when you look at 1 month figures, it's just too short a timeline. It's just, it's just too small a sample, and we need more information to see this, because we've had this whole back and forth. Trump did put out this, 25% tariff to Apple if they didn't make their phones in America. And I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work, guys, because.
Well, no. See, Tim Cook told him he was going to do that, and then he didn't do it. Tim Cook didn't keep his word. So Trump is saying, hey, you told me you were going to do this, so I didn't do anything official to you. I just said, okay, Tim's going to do the right thing. We don't need to do anything official. If you're going to renege on that, then we're going to do something official to make you do it.
There's no way in heck. There's no way in heck Apple will ever build a factory in the United States to make iPhones.
Well, it's about to get real expensive to sell iPhones. Then
it makes
not going to take no for an answer.
Trump can say whatever he wants to say. He can do whatever he wants to do. But look, it's actually going to be, it's actually probably cheaper if Trump actually goes through and says iPhones, have a 25%. It's probably cheaper for Apple to take that hit and then pass that cost on to the consumer than it is for them to try to build a factory in the U.S. because it's not, they can't build it overnight. They can't get the supply chains overnight. They're not going to find the workers overnight.
Yeah, but he's not talking about 25%. He's talking about 400%. You will not be able to sell iPhones in this country if he doesn't come around to Trump's way of thinking.
Yeah, but that, this is a stupid trade war. This is a stupid idea for Trump. I mean, Trump has criticized Walmart for raising prices and passing on the tariffs. And Walmart and any other corporation has every right to go ahead and do that.
They do.
That's what the tariff is, because the tariff.
They do. He has a right to try to jawbone him out of doing it.
He does. He
does.
But
they have the right to do it. And the bottom line is the bottom line.
Right.
But Trump is dead because he wants to capture those technologies, and he wants to make a supply line, all U.S. supply line for all the stuff it takes to make that kind of technology, the cell phones and other things that go in, associated products.
That ship has sailed. That ship has sailed. Long time. I mean,
well, not for him. What I'm saying is that's his goal, is to get that whole supply line set up in the U.S. And you can't really do that unless the big dog makes their stuff here.
Yeah,
right?
It
won't work.
Look, he can talk about that all day, all night, and until he leaves office, several years from now. But it's not going to happen. It's just not a realistic.
They're going to have a 400% tariff on their phones.
No, but look, America's not going to stand for that. Congress will not stand for that. I mean, there'll be bigger fights about that. I mean, there's already, you get enough blowback just from some of the stuff that he's done now. What Trump doesn't want to do, though, is, he doesn't really want to put those kind of tariffs into effect, because he's already seen what happens every time he throws up a big one. He threw up the 150% one on China.
145%. Keeps his word, he won't have a problem.
Yeah, no. Look, you and I are going to disagree on this, because look, this is just, you can't do this. I mean, you physically, economically, you cannot make. There are products you can't make anymore. I understand. Trump wants to reindustrialize America.
Well, they do make a lot of cell phones in the U.S. I mean, like Lynchburg, they make millions of them, all Motorola phones. It's not that you can't make cell phones in the U.S.
Look, there's stuff, there's parts that you can't get here, and to make a cell phone, and a lot of these parts.
That's what he's trying to address. It's like he wants it where there are no parts you can't get here.
So
that's the whole minerals deal and all that. That's what all about.
What happens is the same thing that happens with a lot of things that are manufactured. Kia's running commercials now to try to promote their Americanism, by saying, proudly assembled in the U.S. Well, it doesn't, they use the word assembled, because the word assembled doesn't mean it has to be made 100% in the U.S. It just means that the final assembly is in the U.S. Right.
But I'll tell you what, I passed their factory the other day, and that's a ginormous factory.
Yeah. Look,
it's a full mile of highway it takes to go past it.
Right. No, look, all the efforts it took years ago, decades ago, we have lots of Japanese car manufacturers in this country.
Yeah.
And they brought their technology and their expertise to the U.S., and they're showing the U.S. how to make a better car, a more reliable car, not something that breaks down and requires multiple trips to the repair shop. And so this is a good thing. They provide lots of good jobs, most of them non-unionized, giving them freedom, and they, kind of the whole Japanese Kaizen, way of thinking and business operation, and that's all great. Kia, Hyundai is a Korean company, same type of thing. They have brought their technology and their expertise into the U.S. There are companies, that would love to make products in the U.S. And, I don't know if ABC News is still doing this, but I know they did this for a number of years. They did a lot of Made in America segments on their evening news. And I don't remember if they did this maybe weekly or whatever it was. And that was great. It was great to see some companies still being able to make their product from start to finish in the U.S. but there are challenges that abound with that, which are, we have a wage issue. We don't have we're running kind of low. There are people who don't. There are people. Factory work sucks for the most part. There and it's repetitive. A lot of kind of things like this. So, and in a factory work for something to make an iPhone is not going to be a particularly well-paying job. It's not an auto worker job where they're making money. They're not going to get six-figure wages of a welder or whatever. So, the iPhone has succeeded and other cell phones have succeeded by trying to keep their prices down. Now, prices have gone up over the years as the way you buy a cell phone has changed. You no longer are technically locked into a contract.
Here's your it's like the price of a cell phone has always been sort of a lie, right? Because most of them throw it in with you buy our subscription, we'll basically give you a phone. So
right, that was the old model.
I mean, we have been insulated from the true cost of manufacturing cell phones for a long time, and it must not be as high as we think, because the companies basically hand you the phone. So and they did a lot of it's reconditioned. Like mine was owned by someone.
They'll easily hand you a low end phone with a minimal commitment, but I mean, every time if I want to try to get the best deal on my phone from AT&T or Verizon, it's basically committing to a 36-month payment plan, because and then they give you a pretty good sum. They give you more than the market would give you for your old phone, and then you pay. If you decide to get a higher grade phone than you had, then then you pay the difference there, and you pay that over 3 years. It used to be 24 months and went to 30 months. Now it's like 36 months. It's like a car loan now. I mean, it's like, it just continues to grow and grow and grow, but they lock you in. I mean, one of the, so like we just went overseas, and, we were thinking about getting an eSIM for the phone. But the problem is that because I still have 25 months or whatever it is left to pay on the phone, I couldn't get an eSIM for the phone. I'm locked into AT&T's international service as my only option until that phone is paid off. It's a kind of a complicated game that they play, and how the cellular carriers got you locked in. Apple is going to price their phones at a certain level. It's up to the carriers to decide how they're going to price it to the consumer. Apple couldn't.
Right? Maybe right now, but it's not written in law anywhere that the carriers are the only people who can give you phones. What if somebody put a phone in your hand that wasn't the carrier?
You have lots of options. I mean, you can get an unlocked phone and buy it from Amazon, but you will need a carrier to use it.
Right, that's right. But then the carrier is not selling you the phone.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And you also, if you get a manufacturing stream going in this country for cell phones, it's bigger than it is, right? I mean, there's some already, like all Motorola's are made here, right? Then it becomes more viable. It will take a long time. That's right. Okay, you know what? He makes a good point here. Is Trump does not care about the timeline, right? The thing he said is absolutely true, and it is a reason that most politicians don't do most of the things that we want them to do, because they say the timeline does not work. It'll be by the time we see progress from this thing I courageously did against the opposite in the face of the opposition, I'll long be out of office. Okay. So everyone makes short-term decisions, right? It's like the balance in the budget stuff. We know we should cut the government a lot. We know we should cut spending a lot. We have those guys, Tom Massey and Rand Paul and other, I'm not voting for anything because it doesn't cut spending enough. Okay. But you don't go in and make the cuts, right? You don't do the actual work of coming up with cuts that the American people will accept and all. Right. So now you have a deal where you have a guy who, he don't care about the short-term gain. He can't run again anyway. So, he can just do what he thinks is best. And by the time he leaves office, you'll start to see the trend lines of whether this works, right? And the next guy, presumably, I mean, given the current numbers, who will probably be whoever wins the Republican nomination will be elected president in 2028. That there's a good chance those policies get continued long enough to actually take root and produce results.
Well, I mean, I think Bob. Yeah, I agree with Bob. I mean, in that sense, is that this is a short-term thing. Problem for Trump is that, just as he said, he's trying to get these changes made on a short, in a short period of time when it will take a long time to actually affect. And right. To me, there are some products you can go and some of those things might happen. You might be able to get them done in 2 or 3 years. He might see something by the time he leaves office. Thing is that Trump is a very unique individual. And I don't know that there's anybody else that is going to carry that water quite the way that Trump is after.
Exactly.
So, if you're Tim Cook, you can wait it out too. You can just wait it out because, when Trump is gone, it's going to be hard to find anybody who's going to press as hard as Trump has on these issues. So, and the supply chain is the way the supply chain has changed over the last 20, 30 years. You have all that just in time, technology and things like that for auto parts and stuff like that. It makes it very difficult to just flip the switch and get this thing done in short order. And so, Trump bullying a Tim Cook or any other business leader to try to say, try to make a commitment that this will all happen. I just don't think it's an effective strategy all the way. If he wants to do it, that's fine. I don't, but I think it's just folly to go there when there are other things that are more important than worrying about whether or not a cell phone is made in the US. Do I care where my cell phone is made? Not really. Do the millions of people who own iPhones, Samsungs, and whatever think about it? You wake up in the morning and say, I really hate this phone because it's made mostly in China. No, and Cook he was already moving production into India to get rid of the China fallout. And then Trump hits him with this. Okay. It's like, you can't win for losing when you try to actually try to go and try to placate Trump a little bit. And then he says, no, I want them made here. It's like, to me, Trump has done, he does a lot of good things, but he also does so much off the cuff without a full understanding of the picture of saying, can this really be done? Okay. Look, he makes a lot of mistakes as well.
His point is the technology that underpins microprocessors is effectively the most lethal weapon that exists on Earth today, even more than nukes. Right? That is, if you can keep microprocessor coming off the factory floor, right, on the continuum, right, in a continuous basis, right, then you have all these other things that you can do, right? But if you don't have that, then you remain vulnerable. So what he's saying is, put the biggest customer for microprocessing in the U.S. and make that customer source his stuff in the U.S. Then all this technology, which Trump considers a strategic asset, a weapon in effect, is in the U.S. So it's more than worrying about the economics of cell phones. There's a lot more going on there.
Well, I mean, look, the thing with Apple is that they have gradually over time tried to control more of the production and more of the parts that go into their phones. Rather than contracting, with Intel, with Samsung and things like that, they say, we want to use our own chips. I mean, that's the thing about their computers and things like this, is that they've developed these chips and things like that. That's like, these are ours now. This is Apple technology now going into this kind of a thing. I think even greater danger than the cell phone itself is the technology of the apps that we can use on the cell phones, right?
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It's the microprocessing, whatever it microprocesses, right? And we can make it microprocess weaponry, right? So, to me, I mean, Trump wants all of that available without leaving the U.S. because for strategic reasons. So you can't shut us off from it.
All right. Well, that became a very long debate.
That's right.
Which I'm not sure we solved the problem.
Now you know what to do, America.
Yeah, right. Do you have an idea what's going on here? We could probably do an entire show about that. I'll have to think about that. All right, look. So we need to wrap this up here fairly soon, but I want to talk really briefly about the one big beautiful bill. And so it passed the House, going to the Senate. I saw that Rick Scott said he's going to be a no on this. So it's going to face some hurdles there. Elon Musk has criticized the spending in there. I have, I don't like, I don't like the increase in the salt cap, for example. Okay, this is I don't. My feeling is that at best with salt is that if you're going to give the liberal states something, you index it. You index it to inflation or something like that, so it doesn't stay stagnant forever and ever. But giving them 30,000 or 40,000 potentially in deduction for state and local taxes, hello,
you're rewarding stagnant states, right?
Yeah,
for their economic
all those liberal states, which have been the loud guys, have been banging the drum the loudest. It's like, yeah, okay, great. Now we can go tax those people because they're going to get the write-off that they haven't been able to get, and then now we've got more money to spend. So we've just opened up the door to more irresponsible spending by liberal states, as far as I'm concerned. That's I can see Trump trying to appease some of those New Yorkers and things like that.
New Jersey, right?
Yeah,
New Jersey, they think they can flip.
Yeah, I mean, but it's look, if you're really truly a good fiscal conservative, this is a terrible idea. The Republicans have got to do better than this.
Okay, so my understanding, you mentioned Rick Scott, that what he said was that he was a no for now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think they have enough. They have 5, I think, and they have enough to block it, right? So that means that to get it through the Senate, Trump will have to change some of what's in the House bill to make it acceptable to the Senate, which is that's how the process is designed to work and so forth. And I think it's the rare moment when what the Senate wants for America is better than what the House wants. And in recent years, as especially when Republicans control the House, it was the Senate that tempered things that could be good, right, and made them less good. But in this case, the Senate is the one, they're going to stand there and force some fiscal rectitude on this. And the salt tax is maybe one of the things that bites the dust on that, right? What's over there now is not what they're going to end up voting on. They're going to have to change it. It's going to get conferenced, and you know how these things go. So we still got about 2 or 3 weeks that they're going to work on this, and so it'll be a little bit before we know. The salt thing, I think, is, like I say, it's useful for flipping. They have 5 or 6 leftist states that they think they can flip and keep flipped. So and they think this will help with that. So I agree with you. Like, let's not play electoral politics with tax policy. And I liked the idea of punishing people for enabling high tax government, right? Because it doesn't really work. It stifles other kinds of growth, right? But I think you can also look and see that the states that are growing and are vibrant are the ones on the right, and the ones that are sinking and dying are the ones on the left. For instance, I don't know, did we talk about this last week? Louisiana and Mississippi have passed California and New York on the NAEP test, on student achievement. Louisiana and Mississippi are churning out smarter people than California and New York.
That's pretty remarkable, actually.
That's stunning. That is absolutely stunning. And it's a testament to, the ideals, the political ideals, right, of the left versus the right.
Yeah. All right. We've definitely run out of time, but so let's wrap it up, Brian.
Let's see what we had here that we did not mention. I love Trump wanting to spend the $3 billion from Harvard on trade schools. I think that's excellent. Hard for them that he really argued that, right? Also, I mean, all Harvard has to do is shut down the DEI, right? They want to be stubborn. They can pay full price. I have no problem with that. What is Glenn Ivy doing in El Salvador? I'm glad that there's no more dog and pony shows. Like, you go home, you don't see him.
And he's mad. He was mad. It was even better.
Yeah, he was mad. The WNBA moment of silence for George Floyd. That has got to be the most poorly run league in the history of sports, right? They don't know what to do with their stars. They don't know what to do with league policy. They have, they let people just beat the ever-loving crap out of Caitlin Clark because it, they think it helps them with their crowd or whatever. But I mean, they're ruining a good thing, and they lose $30 million a year. It's beginning to occur to me, how long does the NBA want to play with that? Finally, R.I.P. to Phil Robertson, who was, little known fact, Phil Robertson was the Duck Dynasty guy. He was the starting quarterback at Louisiana Tech before Terry Bradshaw. Yeah, he was the guy before. He played at North Caddo High School, which is in my parish, Caddo Parish, and built this huge thing out of selling duck calls. Man, you got to hand it to him, right? And so R.I.P. to him. Created a lot of jobs in my home state.
It's just hard to imagine Phil without the whole thing. It's like thinking about him back, playing quarterback and just but that whole Duck Dynasty thing is one of those great American success stories. And I think it was I was at an NRA convention, many years ago, and on the exhibit floor when the show was still going on, and it's going to they're going to bring it back now, but they had a humongous trailer. One of those like RV trailer type of things like that. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those deals where you walk in and it's nothing but a merchandise trailer, right? You walk in one thing and you can go through and you can buy any Duck, Dynasty merchandise that they had brought with them. And then you pay and you exit out the other door. And, and they were doing great business. I mean, what a great place for them to be is at the NRA convention and everything like that. But I mean, hail to Phil Robertson and all that he did. And, when you're conservative and you have some family values, you get attacked a lot, but, he withstood all of that. So he was, that was great. I mean, that's good. He's got association there with Terry Bradshaw. I love that.
How about that?
See, that's why I have you on. I get to get those little Louisiana.
You wouldn't have known that any other.
I would not have known that the Louisiana tidbit. I never would have known. I don't even know if I would have known that's how to go on Wikipedia. I don't know.
There you go.
All right, everyone. Thanks for staying with us today. We ran a little bit over, but as always, please stay safe and stay well. And remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.